Hello and welcome everybody to Rock Solid News. Happy Thursday. It is July 13th, and boy, do we got a good one for you tonight. Tonight we're talking COVID boosters coming fall, which means obviously a new wave coming in the fall, and we're talking more money being sent to Ukraine. All fabulous stuff. We look forward to seeing you back in about a minute and a half. Here's our intro, and we'll be back live.
So, the high school drama teacher over here accuses others of liking the sounds of their own voices.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I was a high school teacher before getting into politics. I'm having a little trouble remembering what exactly the job that the leader of the opposition had before getting into politics.
Yes, and he left right in the middle of the semester, and I'm having trouble remembering why.
The small fringe minority who are holding unacceptable views do not represent the views of Canadians whose beds are filled with people who chose not to get vaccinated. The risk posed to all of us by unvaccinated people. It's never too late to do the right thing. We'll be immensely pleased to be able to give you that first dose of vaccine.
I'd like to welcome the fake news media,
and the ideology in order to push particular agendas. And I think some of those agendas, unfortunately, pretty hardcore, pretty extreme. The power of misinformation, because so much, what we hear coming from these protesters from, a scientific perspective just isn't true. And
can you state categorically? You are fake news, sir.
All right. Happy Thursday. It is July 13th, and we have got a good one for you this evening. Welcome to our Rumble viewers and Facebook and YouTube as well, all three platforms at once. Thanks for joining us. We are talking fall COVID boosters, and we are talking more money to Ukraine. In the comments section, if you're listening on Rumble, I'll have to keep my eye down here. And the rest of you guys are in my normal comments section. Toss in and let me know what you think. How much money have we sent to Ukraine as Canadians so far? Because Justin just announced more. So if you're listening and able to comment, toss it in here and we'll get to that in a minute. But first, our first story is the fall COVID boosters. So what I'm about to show you is coming out of Newfoundland. You can bet your pony it's going to come in every single province, just as it did with COVID before. So this is from VOCM. VOCM is an acronym for Voice of the Common Man, which is Newfoundland's local news here, cherished source of local news. Pictured here, I know you might think it's a gargoyle, but that's actually our Minister of Health, or not our Minister of Health, our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Janice Fitzgerald. She is a family physician turned chief medical officer for the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. So one of the sources that Canada and her provinces have been following is the National Advisory Committee on Immunization. Throughout COVID, they've been sourcing this as one of their main sources. They're recommending that Canadians get another booster vaccine this fall. Now, keep in mind, guys, at this point, most people have both their shots, their main shots, even though the second one should be a booster to begin with. But anyways, it got down to two main shots, and then there was a booster and then a booster, and people could get however many boosters, I guess. I just found out recently that people are still getting like the available booster shots that are for like 6 variants ago or whatever, however you want to look at it. But here we are now, the National Advisory Committee on Immunization, and this is national and advising Canadians. So, again, even if you're not in Newfoundland, don't worry, it's coming to you too. Another booster shot. So Dr. Janice Fitzgerald, the Chief Medical Officer, says her team is working on logistics for this fall's booster campaign. just remember, keep an eye on the wording they're using here. A campaign. It's almost like they're running for re-election. Fitzgerald said the booster doses will be updated to target more recent variants of the virus, as I just alluded to there. She says the recommendation, and I guess this is coming from her as a family physician turned chief medical officer. The recommendation is that the new booster should contain an XBB variant antigen. I don't know what XBB is. If somebody in the comments feels like telling me, please. I'm sure it's one of the nonsense variants of COVID, whatever. She wants to make sure that there's an antigen for that specific variant. Oh, that is the latest variant. There's a latest variant circling Canada at this time. Are you aware of that? Like when you go out in public, does it feel to you as if COVID is still a thing? Like, and I'm not saying it ever was, you know what I mean? I'm just taking it at face value because we're reading the cathedral media here. We're reading the legacy media. So we're just taking it at face value, what we're seeing here. So this thing that you see on screen here is the chief medical officer of the province of Newfoundland. And she's now advising our local media. But again, she's taking her advice from the National Advisory Committee, which is where every province has been taking their advice from. And they're advising for fall boosters. So there's going to be a new booster. It's not the same boosters that are already available that your aunts and uncles have been going and dosing themselves up with like steroids. No. Much worse than that. A new booster is coming out. And if that booster is accompanied, as I suspect it will be, with a new variant, you can bet your ass that gets put back onto a mandated form of booster. So get ready. There's at very least a new booster coming for Canada, and like I said, at the very least a new booster, if not a new variant with more mandates, which means the vaccine passport, that kind of thing. Which means doesn't matter how many boosters you already got, you still need the new one. And you know what? They might even say, this is just off the top of my head as I'm speaking, but they might even try to get people like me and the rest of you people that are likely listening here and say, you don't need your old shots. Just get this one and you're fine. I don't know if they'll try that or not. That just kind of popped into my head. So that's our first story. The province is developing a booster campaign. Keep in mind, remember the wording that's being used. They're developing a campaign. And yes, manga, absolutely. What? Exclamation mark, etc. Absolutely. No other way to look at it. Now, our final story, which is more money to Ukraine. How much money do you think we've put into Ukraine thus far? I'm just going to give StreamYard a second to catch up to itself, and then we'll share the screen for you. I suspected the number was high, but in my naivety, I suppose I expected the Americans were doing much of the heavy lifting, which I'm certain they are. But I didn't have the number this high. I suspected this number was closer to what the Americans had given. And when you start looking into how much money's gone in so far, guys, it is astronomical. Keep in mind, I'm just saying Canada right now. And it is a good question, and we do actually have the answer because we're going to be looking at the government's website. And they tell you 8 billion, B with a billion, is what Canada has given thus far since the start of 2022 to Ukraine. And Canada is proud to announce that we have more money coming. So we're just going to pop this up on screen, and this is coming from the government's website. Again, so we're not looking at Reddit or anything like that. And let me see if I can make this a little bigger for you guys so you can read along as well. See how that looks. That should do it. All right, so this is the Prime Minister announces additional measures to support Ukraine and strengthen transatlantic security at NATO summit. In the face of Russia's ongoing brutal invasion of Ukraine, again, this is coming from www.pm.gc.ca. And the links are in the chat for Facebook and YouTube. I got to put them up on Rumble after the fact. North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, allies are standing together and with the Ukrainian people for as long as it takes. As long as it takes. This is your tax dollars. This is your government at work. Now, I'm going to stop sharing for a second. If you're listening, whether you're listening with us live or after the fact later on tonight or tomorrow, next week, whatever, before you see how much money we've already given and how much we're about to give again, think in your mind off the top of your head, what do you think we could use a large sum of money for here in Canada, in any specific province, wherever, for whatever, for the benefit of the Canadian people? Okay? And it's I'm certain most people should already have a list of 3 things off the top of their head. Now, the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, today announced additional support for the alliance and for Ukraine at the NATO summit in Vilnius, Lithuania. At the summit, NATO allies committed to strengthen the alliance's deterrence and defense capabilities, enhancing their assistance to Ukraine. Okay, we're going to get to the juice because you don't need to hear all this nonsense propaganda from our government. At the summit, the Prime Minister announced $541 million in new funding. $541 million in new funding is going to Ukraine as of this was actually announced yesterday. $541 million new going to Ukraine to stop this brutal invasion. But this is the worst part of it. The new funding for Ukraine builds on the over $8 billion in multifaceted assistance Canada has dedicated since the beginning of 2022. Canada has already given $8 billion to help Ukraine. We're announcing another $541 billion or million is announced today. Guys, I know the term, Canada first or whatever is toxic because, you're alt-right or whatever. But there's got to be something we can do at home with $8 billion for the already established Canadian people. And that has nothing to do with race. Canada is already a diverse country. What can we do with $8 billion for the 36 million people that live here in Canada? And instead, we've pissed it away to a known, quote-unquote, Nazi regime. They've been corrupt from beyond. We could use that money. Edward on Rumble says we can use that money to build guillotines. I don't think we need that much. I think we'll have a lot left over to invest otherwise. But guys, look at this. $8 billion has already gone since 2022. $8 billion of your blood, sweat, and tears taxed into oblivion into the government pot so they can send it to Ukraine. When we have carbon taxes piling up, we have sugar taxes piling up. It is like out of touch is what normal people would describe this as, but I see it as purposeful neglect. Just think about this in a more local sense. Picture your family starving as you're giving money to the crackhead down the road so he can go get high, as your parents do that. Imagine your parents funding the local crackhead down the road instead of putting food on your table. That's what your government is doing to you right now. The Prime Minister announced 541 million in new funding yesterday. This adds to already over 8 billion already given. Build work camps for pedophiles. Rumble's got a great comment section, guys. It's fantastic. And Elizabeth here has already said on Facebook or YouTube, Facebook it looks like, money to veterans, old age pensioners, homelessness. We have 40 million people here. I mean, at the end of the day, if you take 8 billion and divide it by 40 million, whatever that total is, I'd be happier if our government just wrote everybody that check and sent it to them than funding this. I don't even know what to call it at this point. Anyways, if you do have something to say about this, because we're not going to stay on too much longer, if you're on Facebook or YouTube, you should see a StreamYard link. If you want to join and have your say, by all means, that's what this is for. There is somebody here in the background. I'm not sure, Gunther, if you're there and ready to go. If you want to give me a signal, if you can hear me. I don't want to bring you on unless you are ready to go. He says yes. Okay. All right. So we're gonna bring on Gunther. We'll see how the connection goes with that. And if anybody else feels like joining, you have to watch through Facebook, unfortunately, or YouTube to be able to get the comments. It's a StreamYard link. But we do love our Rumble listeners, subscribers, and they should be giving me, Edward says, 40,000 a year per child for homeschooling my children. Yes, absolutely. Whatever per child gets spent on your children in the public education, that should be absolutely given to you if you're homeschooling your children. So Gunther, I'm going to say hello to you. Happy Thursday, and I'll give you the floor. What's on your mind?
Hey, happy Thursday. Yeah, I know this is an interesting topic. I like you kind of towards the end there, and especially Elizabeth's comment there. Yeah, when you think about the $8 billion we're sending to Ukraine that could be spent, which I think is about $200 a head, roughly. I'm thinking for the 40 million people in Canada, right? But yeah, if they gave us back a check each for that, that's one thing. Or think about it as this: it's really like $8 billion. You could take 8,000 homeless people and give them $1 million. 8,000. I don't know how many homeless people we have in Canada, but I think it might clean up the problem all pretty quickly.
Yeah.
The veterans, same thing. And you're talking about the boosters and the vax as well. I remember that Canada committed to 8 boosters per person in Canada. So again, if you're, I don't know what the cost of a booster shot or vaccine is, but I'm guessing 50, $100 at least. There's another 4 billion right there per shot. So, and they got 8 of them. So again, how many homeless could we have helped and veterans and everything instead of this useless flu shot that we're getting that's obviously got a lot of problems with it? I don't know. It's a sad state of affairs.
Well,
Sad state.
you bring up a good point, and I think it's either Finland or Sweden or Norway. One of these countries runs this house. It's called a transition house, is I think how they describe it, or whatever. But it's for homeless people. It's for people who might be veterans or just anyone really. And what it is it's a place where you can go. It's like an apartment complex, but it's got amenities and necessities inside of it as well, with staff that are trained for different things. And the whole idea is to get you in and get you back out, get you in and get you back out to society. If you're in a place where you can't really be a productive member for whatever reason, right? Think like if you're homeless, you can't really get ahead.
No.
Right. But if you had a place to go where you could get cleaned up, you could get a little training, you could get someone to get your resume done, you could get some counseling, you could get some advice, and then find out what you're good at, what you might be able to do, and then get you back into society. Isn't that the ideal?
I would think so. I think that's what most people feel would be an excellent solution to these types of problems.
I feel like with $8 billion, you could pick a city in Canada, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and just try a pilot project in one of them.
Yeah. Hit a few of the big major cities.
Help the people out.
Yeah, absolutely. Although I'm starting to lean towards, maybe our solution for everybody to start thinking about is we just start handing back all our IDs and our birth certificates and driver's license and SIM cards and give it all back to the government and say, we don't want to party anymore. Like you carry that debt. Well, I'm not part of that debt anymore. You want to send money to Ukraine? Go ahead. You pay for it. I'm not paying for it anymore.
Now, if you do that, though, won't you give up access to your trust?
Well, that's what, you have to collapse a trust. But I mean, if enough is due at once and create our own trust, a separate trust outside of them, and pool everything together. Everybody we'd need a bank, of course. We need to create a people's bank or something, and everybody pool in and create a trust, and you just do what they're doing. Give the taxes. You write your credits and debts, but do it to just the trust, just the local. You keep it local. You can maybe have a set up your local trust and then have them federate to a nationwide connection for things that we need nationwide, right? But similar system, what they got, just get out of their system. Say, fuck you guys. You keep your system. We'll build a new one without you. Forget it. You take your debt.
I think I'm always game for getting this system to collapse itself or we collapse it. However, I'm game for a new system. I've been wanting that for a while. And let me ask you, Gunther, because we've kind of touched on the money to Ukraine here a little bit, but how about the fall booster thing? Do you think the fact that they're announcing a fall booster campaign, because that's the wording they used here, they're already it's mid-July, they're talking about a fall booster campaign. Does that tell you that a new variant's coming, or am I just reading too much into that, do you think?
You're probably bang on the money, but at the same token, I don't understand how we can still be, anybody in our government can still be promoting it, with governments around the world coming out with all kinds of evidence that are the thing was either a fraud from begin with, or B, that at least the vaccines are not safe. And what is our country doing? What are our health officials and our governments doing? Still backing this stuff? Why haven't they put a halt to it immediately? the numbers are there to say we shouldn't be doing this, but they're not. They're not stopping, and I don't know why.
That's interesting because Canada at every facet of COVID has gone against the actual narrative, like the actual COVID narrative, which is strange. So like even when countries started ceasing using certain vaccines because of safety concerns, England had taken like Johnson and Johnson out at one point. All this, Canada kept
Yeah.
using all of them,
Yeah.
and the what was it? The PCR test. This is the interesting one. So as the PCR test was getting more criticism, it came out that the World Health Organization, along with Fauci in his little the American corner, the CDC, were saying anything over 31 cycles on a PCR test, you're basically going to get false positives everywhere. You're picking up anything. So anything over 30 cycles, 31 cycles is, and at 33, which is an interesting number, was like their cap. They said, I really wouldn't go any higher than 33, which, interesting. But Canada, at the very least, Newfoundland and the Atlantic provinces, openly admit to running their PCR test of 45 cycles.
Yeah. Yeah. It actually, what was also interesting is when they came out with the vaccine, we actually did drop our cycles down to more realistic values. Like, Quebec, I think, was up at 45 cycles or something like that. Ontario, or either we or Quebec at one point. It was crazy, some of the cycles they had going. And then when they brought out the vaccine, suddenly they lowered the cycles on the tests. And like, what? It's mind-blowing that more people aren't just extremely angry at this point anyway. I don't know.
So we have well, I'll tell you, Gunther, we have the chief medical officer that I showed for Newfoundland here on screen, if you were here at the start. She came out at one point early on in COVID and had to I don't know, walk a tightrope, we'll say, because a bunch of COVID tests had gone missing. People had taken them, sent them into the government facility to have the proper expert analyze, because this is during COVID, right? And they went missing. So Eastern Health, which is our one of our subsections of the health district here in Newfoundland, said to presume your test was positive.
What?
That's the answer they were giving people. So they were freaking out and calling the government, being like, yo, Eastern Health is telling me to presume I'm positive. I need another test. And then she had to give a big press conference and try to walk a tightrope of we were saying it so that you wouldn't just all run out and be in public and yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, a bunch of tests went missing, but they were half batches. So she couldn't explain how that happened. Half of a batch arrived, but half of it didn't. How does that happen if the whole batch is transported together?
I don't know.
It was very shady stuff.
Well, the other scary thing about all these tests, right? They're all collecting DNA. And you see BlackRock making moves. They've now got, not BlackRock, Blackstone made moves and got the ancestry.ca.com or whatever, the ancestry organization. They already owned 23andMe. So they've got huge DNA databases, and they're all talking about how they can modify DNA and do stuff these days. That's the part that scares me the most. They just got everybody's DNA now, and a lot of us who say, okay, well, I didn't run out and get tests and I didn't do this and do that, right? We think we're safe, but we already know they can predict DNA based on family members, and all your family members get their DNA, so they got your DNA too, basically. So
yeah.
This is a scary position to be in, I think. But
yeah, totally. Gunther, before we say goodbye to you, do you have anything as a final thought you want to say on either of the topics before I let you go and do our goodbyes here?
Yeah, well, I just no, I'll just say my goodbye out and let people dwell and think on what I said earlier about one possible solution for us, because I think the Bible says, "Come out of her, my people, get out of Babylon." So anyway, have a good night. God bless everybody. And
All right, take care. Thanks for coming on, Gunther. Cheers. Somebody in the Rumble comments just said, "Why do all chief medical officers look like unhealthy drug addicts?" That is a very good question. You're all familiar with Dr. Tan, so I don't need to show you what he looks, or sorry, she looks like. But this here is Newfoundland's chief medical officer, and if you're just listening and you're not able to look at your screen, picture being downtown late at night and having some like scrawny, kind of like translucent skin type person walk up to you, scratching their neck, being like, "Hey, you got some spare change?" Like that's what you're seeing on the screen right now. This is a and yeah, that's it. They took my DNA long ago on some bullshit. Yeah, well, I mean, if you've ever been fingerprinted, yeah. Anyways, we'll leave it at that. All right, guys, we're already past the half an hour mark. That's longer than we thought we were going to go here tonight. So that's going to bring us to wrap. Thank you for listening. Thanks to my viewers on Rumble, guys, and the comments section. I see you there. I'm trying to keep an eye on you. I can't put your comments up on screen. StreamYard doesn't let me. To YouTube and Facebook viewers, thank you very much. And Gunther for popping in to say hi and giving us his thoughts. If you ever listen to our streams and you want to chime in and you want to have more than just typing in the comment section, look for the StreamYard link. It's pinned at the top on Facebook and YouTube. You can always click that link. It brings you backstage, and I'll prompt you and bring you on. And you can talk to the audience and to myself. And you can tell me I'm right, tell me I'm wrong. You can talk about what's on your mind. That's what we do here. That's We the People Media. If it's going to be We the People Media, it has to be by the people. If it's going to be for the people, that's how we do it. Anyways, that's a wrap, guys. Thank you for listening. I very much appreciate it. And as always, you people, you